Greetings and welcome to my presentation. I'm Emily Cole and I will be discussing how moving to an old yet new style of nuclear energy can be implemented into our societies, which will create safer jobs for those invested in nuclear energy, as well as pointing out the positives, the negatives, and the overall outcome of making this switch. So first let us talk about how standard reactors are different from molten salt reactors, or better known as MSREs, which I'll be getting more into those later on in this presentation. What resources are being used and emitted from our current nuclear power plants today? Well, uranium, which is its main fuel, plutonium, which is a byproduct from uranium after it has been broken down, and water. Lots and lots of water, which actually makes these reactors dependent to be near a certain type or amount of water source. In case of an emergency, like a meltdown, they use that water in the system in order to cool the reactor's core and prevent further damage. Compared to a molten salt reactor that utilizes salt, or fluoride salt to be exact, thorium as its main power source, which is actually taken from already broken down uranium. So you can use the old uranium from standard reactors that have been pushed aside as waste as molten salt reactors' main source of energy, thorium. Heated systems, which means that these reactors don't need or use water as a resource since they're already liquefied. These systems are easily controlled, and when danger arises, you simply stop adding fuel and it shuts itself down, completely erasing the fear of a meltdown. I wanted to just go ahead and add this little interjection edit here to correct myself from my previous recording that it is not possible to get thorium from uranium. I am incorrect on that. Just so you know, for the rest of this presentation, thorium is actually transferred and broken down or breeded into uranium, which is used in the molten salt reactors. But thorium is more easily abundant and available for us to gather and use than uranium stores that are currently known globally. Thank you. The uranium market. Well, where is uranium located? If we take our attention to the left-hand side, we can see a nice infographic provided by the World Nuclear Organization, and we can see all of the countries who have available to them uranium as a resource. Well, uranium isn't exactly abundant in the United States, sitting at about 4% or 2 tons, or really anywhere except for a handful of lucky countries. This means all uranium basically is imported, which causes a higher price tag for those currently using these standard reactors. Looking at the Fred graph below, we can see that uranium is on a global scale, has a sort of weird trend from lower prices averaging from around 26 cents per kilogram to its highest rate of almost $1.40. Which happened right before the big recession of 2007 and 2008. But looking at the infographic, we should see and be alarmed by the world total that has been listed, which is only at 59 tons, which is left globally. It's the world total. Now, it's not a very abundant resource, and if we don't have an abundant resource, we shouldn't keep mining it to extinction. So because it's becoming scarce, prices increase even more, And don't forget, it's imported. And that means on top of that, we would already have to pay would go up even further, which is kind of crazy if you ask me. But we should remember, just because price rises as the uranium availability lowers, it certainly doesn't mean that our demand for this energy is going to just fade away with that resource. In fact, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency, or the IAEA, the annual world requirements of uranium is expected to grow from the present level of some 66,000 tons to nearly 82,000 tons of uranium needed and used by the year 2025, which is surprisingly close to us. So in 8 years, the demand of uranium is increased by 16,000 tons, which equals out to 2,000 tons used and needed per year globally. With only 59 L-tons left, that really doesn't leave us for very much wiggle room. Now, how can we achieve new development involving nuclear energy? Well, I'll say out with the old, in with the new system. That should be number one. Making a switch to those who are using standard reactors would actually benefit from hooking up with the people who are making new molten salt reactors by selling those companies their old uranium waste, which is used as a broken down fuel for molten salt reactors. That would give the older standard reactor companies the power to have an income to allow them to change themselves, to change their process. They need to stop mining for uranium resources, which are depleting fast. And another the biggest, I want to say, is to educate others about the options that are out there. There's not just molten salt reactors. We also have a wide variety that are along the same lines as MSREs that are just as efficient. We need to stop using wasteful methods to produce energy. So in the next few slides, I will be introducing you to what I find is my favorite, the liquid fluoride molten salt reactors that also have thorium. Now, I want to introduce to you liquid fluoride molten salt reactors. The first thing that you need to know is that fluoride fuel is the main source, along with thorium as like the power, I want to say, behind the fluoride fuel is an easier way of putting it, as its main fuel system instead of just uranium being broken down. Now, liquid fluoride molten salt reactors, MSREs, do not have a risk of meltdowns. They are walk-away safe, and they've actually been pre-testing this method since around the 1960s, 1950s, early to middle 1950s. So it's already been tested, it's already been proven to work. There's no payment out of pocket to have to do experiment to see if this would work for companies trying to start these up. It's good to go. The cost of salts. Well, just so you know, with this spread graph, I tried to specifically look up fluoride salts for us, but I was unable to find a specific chart with fluoride salt as its main subject. So for this one, we were looking at the producer price index by commodity for chemicals and allied products, salt, evaporated, and solar. We can see by this graph that there's been a nice steady upward trend from 2013 onward. Now this means companies who want to provide the power plants using liquid fluoride molten salt reactors would be able to actually make a little bit more money than they have been, which is a great starting point. You want to be able to make money on all fronts to be able to have a successful cycle. And I want to go ahead and take the brief time to mention that fluoride salts are actually very abundant, as well as thorium. I know it's not on here, but I'm just throwing it out there. Both of these resources are abundant, cheap to harvest, and all around just a great resource to think about replacing standard reactors with, just using uranium with. Now, looking at both the function compared to standard plants from an MSRE point of view, I have two pictures here that'll show us how both of these work. And please excuse my paint mock-up of a molten salt reactor, but I felt that the basic design was so simple that even I could just go into paint and create it. Now, just for a little side note, these reactor tanks, along with the emergency drain tanks, this whole system is usually set up underground. It takes up a very small amount of land to make these, whereas now we look at the standard nuclear power plant, it needs a massive area to be able to have this set up and for it to be able to function. And I want to say, just comparing both of these images, we can see that, again, the obvious choice is probably in the simplicity that the molten salt reactor offers us. We should take advantage of how easy it is to set up a company if they wanted to use this type of style of nuclear energy. Now, the negative externalities of both of these reactor types is that they still produce waste. But, as we can see, the standard or light water reactor uses so much uranium first in order to be put into the facility that then produces this crazy amount of excess waste, which isn't just plutonium, it's also fission products and uranium-235 as well as uranium-238. That's a lot of waste. It's a lot of radioactive waste. Now, compared to MSREs, or the liquid fluoride thorium reactor, we only need 1 ton of thorium to be put into a facility that converts thorium-232 into uranium-233, and then that's burnt as the energy, but we only get 1 ton of fission products as the waste. Now, we can see here it says in 10 years, 83% of fission products are stable. Now, you might think that's kind of a long time, but if we read one more below, 17% of fission products are stored for approximately 300 years. 300 years. Now, 1 ton of fission products is about the same amount as the standard reactor. So we really don't get any kind of win out of that, besides the fact that that is the only waste byproduct, is the fission byproduct. There is no uranium waste, since the uranium is completely recycled within the liquid fluoride thorium reactor as its fuel. We need to start thinking economically. But first, I want to take the time to mention what Dr. Alvin Weinberg, the creator of molten salt reactor technology, have once said. He says that cheap and abundant nuclear energy is no longer a luxury. It will eventually be a necessity for the maintenance of the human condition. Now, he also took the time to tell us that there are two specific burners and breeders involved in fast or thermal spectra using fluoride or chloride salt-based fuels and a range of fissile or fertile consumables. Now, these are defined by using fluoride salts and breeding thorium into uranium-233 in the thermal spectrum. So it all happens inside the molten system. Another way that we can think about this is that the positive externalities that we can go ahead and look at are money, jobs, being able to balance out the current waste that has been produced from standard reactors and recycle that and clean up the mess that we have already left behind, so that way it's not sitting around for a few more 100 years, which would mean that would be even more jobs created for the families that will be needing this type of energy in the future. And if you start off with this as well, every country uses nuclear power on some small scale. So you can even take this as a global corporation. There are many people trying to do that right now, but I think the best way to really get this point across is that by changing the way that we think about nuclear energy, will really change the way that we can have a support system for clean energy, since nuclear does not emit any type of CO2, and we wouldn't have to go and get rare resources, since thorium can be found and created easily, and fluoride salts are abundant on practically every country. Thank you very much, and thank you for watching.